Alright, so today's movie review is Tartuffe from 1926, starring Emil Jannings and directed by F.W. Murnau. So now, let me read the critic list description. A young man shows his millionaire grandfather a film based on Moliere's play Tartuffe in order to expose the old man's hypocritical governess who covets the young man's inheritance. Alright, so this is a very intriguing and interesting plot. I'm not familiar with the play that does take place in this movie, but I love Murnau, right? F.W. Murnau, one of the greatest directors in the silent era and from Germany. He also did Nosferatu, Faust, Sunrise. I reviewed several of his movies on this channel. He's just a really good director. So, plot-wise, I really liked this one. I gave it a 5 out of 5. I thought it was very interesting. I like the mix of the modern time and the old time within this film. It's interesting how timeless this sort of a story can be. How we're all capable of falling for, hypocrites and, charismatic leaders or people or whoever. It could be religiously, politically, an actor, a boss, whomever it is. We're all susceptible to that sort of a thing. And for myself, I know that applies in my life. I know, I have to make sure that things I do in my life do not supersede the love that I have for my wife and for my family. And I think that's a very universal lesson that we can all learn. Anyone could relate to that for sure. So, yeah, that's why I gave the plot a 5 out of 5. All right, let's move on to the directing. The acting. Let me backtrack. All right, so let's move on to the acting. The acting, I gave it a 4 out of 5. I thought it was really good. I wish we had more time with Emil Jannings. He's pictured there on the left. He's the Tartuffe. That's his character. I also would have liked to see more of the husband and why he was devoted to Tartuffe. We're kind of just introduced to that concept, but no real reasoning behind it. But otherwise, the actress for the wife was good. Probably the best cast member in the whole film. But overall, it was fine acting. I wish there was a little bit more to it. All right, 4 out of 5. All right, let's move on to the set design. Set design, 5 out of 5. I thought they looked incredible, especially in the 18th century part of the film. Because the film itself starts out in a modern setting, 1920s Germany. And then the grandson, he's wearing a disguise. He puts up a projector and starts playing this story here, and that's where we spend most of the film is in the story. It was an interesting choice for sure, and I thought the set designs looked incredible and looked very realistic to the era. I was very, very impressed with it. 5 out of 5. All right, cinematography. I get a 4. I thought it was pretty basic, but there were some really cool close-ups, and the shot that I really liked was there was a giant candlestick in the foreground, and you have Tartuffe on one side, the wife on the other, and they're kind of converging in the middle. I thought that was really cool. That was a really cool shot, but overall, pretty basic. Nothing super crazy. 4 out of 5. All right, the music. So I gave it a 3.5, as I typically do with silent films if the score isn't the original one. But I like the one that is here. I believe it was recorded in 2002. At least the Kino Lorber version that I saw was. I thought it worked really, really well. It sounded very orchestral. It really set the tone and the mood. So, yeah, 3.5 out of 5. Alright, so my overall score is a 4.3 out of 5, which is an 86% on Criticlist. Now let me break down my Criticlist rating. Graphic language, none. Violence, none. Nudity, sexual content. There's some low-cut dresses that are kind of typical of the 18th century. Political bias, none. Family-friendly. I don't think kids should watch this. Not because it's, super gruesome or sexual or anything like that. But I don't think kids would understand the story or what's going on. I don't think they'd be interested in it. Entertainment value, very entertaining and a very interesting concept with a film within a film. I thought that was pretty well handled and put together. So overall, would I recommend this movie? Yes, I would. This has that timeless story like I was mentioning about the need to make sure whatever your passion is, do not let it overwhelm the love you have for your spouse. That could be your career, a political figure, a movement you support, or even a podcast. Make sure, whatever it may be, make sure your family is still central. And I think that's a great message that a lot of us could appreciate and learn from. All right, well, those are my thoughts overall on Tartuffe from 1926, and that concludes today's movie review.